Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on filing incoming documents accurately into MEDITECH eChart. From conversations with your peers, it's clear that MEDITECH customers want an easier way to get documentation into the patient's eChart. My name is Brittany White, and I'm a part of the product marketing group here at Forward Advantage. I will be your moderator of today's webinar. Our speakers today are Kevin Frazier, Manager of Client Services here at Forward Advantage, as well as Rick Hansen, Assistant Director, Complementary Systems at Engage. We'd like to thank both Kevin and Rick for joining us today and sharing in their experience with RapidFiler. There are a lot of people on the line, so your phones are muted. If you have a question, please enter it into the question panel on your screen, and we'll do our best to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. We will be recording this session, and we'll send out an email with a link to the recording after the webinar has concluded. Thank you again for your time. And with that, I will pass it to Kevin.
Thank you, Brittany. Once again, I'm Kevin Frazier. I'm the Manager of Client Services here at Forward Advantage, and I appreciate everybody taking some time out of their busy day to walk through RapidFiler with us. We built RapidFiler just like we build every other application at Forward Advantage. We got customer feedback and then created a solution. And the goal here was to come up with a simple way to meet the challenge that MEDITECH hospitals have getting external documents into a patient's eChart. Typically, printing and scanning of documents, manipulating the document by hand, scanning the document back in, and trying to manually associate the patient record was a waste of time and paper. So our goal was, again, some way to simply do this and electronically do this and more accurately do this to streamline the process. So what we came up with was a solution that not only can handle PDF documents that we're going to be talking today, which is a core part of RapidFiler, which we call the workflow processor. There are other document formats you'll see over here on the left side of the screen that we either can handle or are working on handling as well. And the goal of RapidFiler is not just to get documents into the MEDITECH ECM, but also to make it available in other platforms, as well as you'll see on the right-hand side there. Our webinar today is really centered around the use case at Summit Pacific Medical Center, a critical access hospital in the Pacific Northwest. And that's exactly why Rick is here today. Is Rick and Engage are the IT consultants for Summit Pacific, and Rick has played an instrumental part in getting RapidFiler in production at that particular hospital. The basic use case for Summit Pacific is really the core use case for RapidFiler itself. The application monitors a designated folder which can manipulate documents for processing, and also not just processing into the eChart, but also allows for multiple folders to be available to move documents from the holding folder into specific departmental report folders, etc. So you not only are managing the document into its final destination, but you're also putting it different places for different departments or different users to be able to work those documents. The important thing here is we also have an interface with the MEDITECH DR, which allows you to electronically associate the documents with a patient record instead of trying to hit and miss manually. So once the document is associated with the patient, we have the ability to accept the document into the MEDITECH ECM filer folder, and MEDITECH will automatically consume that document and place it properly into the patient's chart. So with that background, we'll go ahead and get right into the meat of the webinar and have Rick go through his experience with RapidFiler at Summit Pacific. Rick?
Hi, I'm Rick Hansen. I work with Engage in the Pacific Northwest. We're a company that implements MEDITECH and applications to support MEDITECH, and been in business for a little bit over 20 years. On the MEDITECH side, I've been working with the company for over 11 years. I support the outlying systems for MEDITECH, which RapidFiler and Forward Advantage is part of. So basically, it started out where all we were trying to do was just migrate documents from one EMR to the new MEDITECH ambulatory system. And all the patient charts that they had in their old system, they were basically trying to just simply move. Now, with acute products, Forward Advantage offers another product to do that in mass when you migrate to different version of MEDITECH or into a new EHR. However, this was an outpatient EHR that they already had established that was really just documents in files and folders, and then had a supporting application server for doing auxiliary stuff like emailing and faxing. From that, we actually ended up with using RapidFiler and Forward Advantage, making it so that we were actually, at the end of the day, handling MEDITECH clinical workflows and workloads. So we worked often with Forward Advantage, not to just do RapidFiler. It's a brand new application, as you know, but we've been implementing and using Forward Advantage with our MEDITECH implementations in the Northwest, and we have a few of them out there right now that we actually use pretty much the full communication directors to work with them in MEDITECH. So to solve Summit Pacific's problem, we were like, well, you have a new system, a Forward Advantage system that you're going to be using with MEDITECH anyway, and we can use this along with RapidFiler to get the documents not only moved from your old system, but go ahead and handle the inbound faxing that was coming in too, so that the HIM department could continue to move documents from the inbound fax solution that they have to the MEDITECH chart. So the way we did that was, of course, implement RapidFiler, and then with scanning and archiving using Enterprise Content Management for MEDITECH, we were able to actually take those documents and tie them to the patient chart. So how do we get there? Well, the first thing we needed to do, of course, was to review the requirement. And this requirement was kind of a moving target because at first, like I said, we were actually looking at just migrating charts and then having that information in MEDITECH to having to actually route the document through the provider's hands and back into the chart. So the first thing that we ended up doing was, of course, implementing the necessary architecture, which was, for this particular one, they chose Forward Advantage as a product that they could use for doing outbound faxing, and discovered that Forward Advantage works very well for inbound faxing, so we went ahead and implemented that as part of their overall enterprise fax management to replace their old system, which was called, I think, Document Manager. Once we did that, of course, we had some testing to do because there was a large influx of faxes that had to be put in place by the time they went live. So the inbound portion of Forward Advantage essentially was a folder that was set up by Forward Advantage to make it so that we could view documents using RapidFiler and then place them into the MEDITECH chart. Once we configured and tested that this was working, we went ahead and went live with the system and were able to actually handle documents. And we used RapidFiler to actually set up a folder structure that allowed them to route documents from entity to entity. So the HIM was taking a document, putting it in a folder that belonged to a clinical office, and then they would take a look at the document. And at the time, at the very beginning, they were actually printing them out and doing what they'd always done with them before, routing them through their providers, getting them signed and getting them scanned back into the EHR. So essentially what we ended up doing was taking it a step farther and using RapidFiler and MEDITECH. We were able to actually take the two and shorten that process considerably, and I'll show you that. So as I said before, their Forward Advantage system actually leveraged voice over IP. Engage hosts it, and they actually have a gateway at their office that allows us to use FOIP to handle all the faxes that come in through the gateway that we purchased from Forward Advantage as part of their enterprise suite. We configured the inbound faxing so that we had a new location for all the faxes that came in, and basically did cut of the phone number at the PBX on cutover time so that all the active faxes that used to go to the old system would come to the new one, and make it so that all the documents were centralized and could be handled appropriately. So Kevin showed you this a little bit earlier. This is kind of what the architecture of the system looks like in this case, where we, in our data center at Engage, we do a lot of hosting, for a lot of different products, Forward Advantage being one of them. And in this case, we wanted to make sure that we weren't using old technology or plugging any physical devices into servers. We wanted to virtualize the server, very importantly. And Forward Advantage provides a dialogic gateway that can attach to a PBX or into a SIP trunk for the phone companies that allows you to handle faxes over IP. You'll also notice in this diagram that the RapidFiler clients actually live at Summit Pacific, and they're deployed very quickly to whoever needs to use them to access both file structures. In our case, we basically have the inbound folder on the hosted side, and then they set up a series of folders on their own file share so that they could actually maintain control and change what they needed to change so that they could have a document distribution methodology. Once the documents are reviewed, of course, they could be posted directly into the MEDITECH eChart. And this, again, we added to this particular methodology by adding MEDITECH routing to this. And I'll show you that here in a second. Essentially, the way RapidFiler works is it adjusts the file format so that it can use MEDITECH ECM to file documents into MEDITECH, into the eChart. And we also, as part of this, used MEDITECH messaging groups to allow MEDITECH document types to be routed to those messaging groups as they were selected based upon the MEDITECH form type. And of course, the folder structure for RapidFiler was kind of an ever-changing thing at the very beginning. We established the folder structure for RapidFiler initially to make sure that the HIM could see the inbound faxes, place them in folders for the clinics and for the providers, and then set up document distribution based upon the customer requirement. So this is kind of a look at RapidFiler and how it works. It essentially allows you to pick the patient from a query to the MEDITECH DR and attach the document to that patient and send it through to the actual location where the ECM cold feed takes documents in. And the file format allows you to attach it to a specific patient. And that here's kind of the technical look at this. It basically takes an application ID and assigns it a very specific number. And the application ID itself is something that you can establish yourself. You can name it pretty much anything you want to. And then the number that follows it is a unique identifier. In this case, we are not showing an account number, but if the patient already had a visit, that account number could be selected and actually placed into the chart associated with that particular visit. And then, of course, the MRN, in this case, in this example, there is no account number, so there's no visit. But we would have a document that might be important to their next patient visit to wherever it is that they're heading. And so the MRN, of course, identifies the patient that's coming in. And then the MEDITECH record document form ID in RapidFiler, and what I mean by that is the MEDITECH record document needs to match the form ID in RapidFiler so that when it comes through, MEDITECH knows where to place it in the chart and identify it. And then, of course, in RapidFiler, you could have multiple numbers of pages that go in, and this just tells you how many pages in this particular document exist. And then, finally, the create date. The reason why this is important is if you have an account number associated with a visit, that create date will always be the date of that visit. And one of the great things that RapidFiler was able, or Forward Advantage was able to do with RapidFiler to help the MEDITECH customer was they were able to actually take this date and turn it into a service date. So in the case where you don't have an account number, you can literally, in the application, change this to the date of service. So let's say I went in to have a lab a month ago. The doctor doesn't want to see a date of today because I'm visiting. The doctor wants to see the date that the lab result was made or the lab visit was made. So this particular part of the tool gives you the ability to actually set that date, so when they see the document in MEDITECH, it's a lab result from a month ago, and that's really important to them. And then finally, there's the flag. The flag must be Y if there's no account, so it basically files to the patient record. So that's just a technical detail as part of the interface. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about how we set the thing up, RapidFiler, and got it into a position where we could move documents through it successfully, and we could route documents to the clinics using the RapidFiler only folder structure, and then of course we could post the documents to the patient chart. One of the great things that we were able to do after this was in place, though, was able to use MEDITECH to actually route the documents directly to the MEDITECH workflow. So in your ambulatory clinics, this is a great thing because they basically end up with a document that pops in and actually tells them that there is new work for a particular patient. At that point, they can route the document to the provider that needs to do the work and annotate. So there's no more printing, there's no more scanning back into the system. Essentially, it's already in the MEDITECH chart. The clinic can route it to the right person, make the appropriate notes, change the subjects, and make that document work for everybody without having to ever print it out. This is a massive time saver. So this is just an example of what it would look like in the actual e-chart in the inpatient record. So if something comes through, you can actually see the document show up as a viewable document that you can look at in the chart. In the web ambulatory piece, it comes in and looks like this. It pops in as part of the workload, shows up in blue, basically tells you who it was sent to. In this case, it was sent to Crystal Lash. And at this point, they can take that document and decide how they want to route it. They can also do something that's pretty slick here where they can change the subject as part of the message that they send on so that it's more clear. The MEDITECH form IDs are pretty small and they're 1 or 2 words that you use for it. So if there's something more that they need to do, they can literally edit the subject under the actions and make it more clear to whoever they're sending it on to. So you'll notice that we made the change to the subject to show that from letter, we changed it to sample letter. The other great part about the way that this document integrates is that it allows us to send to different people on the distribution list. It can be one or multiple recipients, and for them to take action with the document that's coming in. And then, of course, you can add your extra annotations so that whoever you're sending it to has a better idea of what the document might entail, thus saving them time on the other side. Since this is already in the MEDITECH chart, once they hit complete, it essentially is in part of the permanent chart and the document leaves the workload. Inside the ambulatory chart, you see the activity of the document that we sent through the sample letter that was on 510, and it's right there at the top where you can select the document and view it at any time. Also, in this case, letters come in via scanned documents in the summary, so it shows up there. However, depending on how MEDITECH is set up for the form IDs, you can actually make it so that lab results show up as a scanned document in the lab results area. So there's some configuration required in MEDITECH, but it's well worth the time to take just because the way that it comes back in the patient chart is far more accurate than if you just post it to the chart and walk away from it. So we kind of went through why we needed to do it. We needed to do it to support their old outpatient charting system and actually not only get documents moved, but also figure out how to continue to allow them to work in the same type of manner with the littlest impact. RapidFiler allowed us to do that. It was a very big deal for them. And RapidFiler can be used to distribute documents in a distributed method, which means we basically, when we built this, we set up 30 or 40 different folders that they could send documents to that people could take action on, and it was outside of the MEDITECH chart. Once we integrated the MEDITECH component, we were able to centralize so that we basically took those 30 folders down into just a few that the HIM department used, because the document was now in the MEDITECH chart before it ever got to the clinicians. And the clinicians love this because they don't have to do any work with document handling. They don't have to print, they don't have to scan back, they don't have to do anything when it comes to that document handling. And I can tell you, just for this use case, essentially, they were able to move over 60,000 documents in the first 6 months. So it's a very significant workload for the cost. Finally, after we had centralized this and got the MEDITECH portion working, we also have begun to take Forward Advantage and RapidFiler and figuring out the best way to move it back towards a distributed solution. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted to take some of the workload off of the centralized HIM document handling and put documents that didn't need to be handled by HIM directly into the department's path. So essentially, we are now doing like med refills, which was a big chunk of the faxes that they were receiving, and put them directly into the pharmacy's hands where they handled them, filled the prescriptions, and moved on. So I can just show you very quickly how quick it is to get a document through RapidFiler. So essentially, I can take a document, select it, and attach it. And in this case, we set up 3 different application IDs where we can actually send it to an application ID of the customer's choice. So it's very customizable. In our case here, we actually set something up so that we can choose ambulatory general or workload. And what workload means is that's the one type of form ID that we're going to use to send it all the way through to place on the ambulatory workload in the chart, as I showed you in the examples earlier. So in this case, we'll go ahead and choose workload, and our form ID is the one that's actually set up in MEDITECH to match the RapidFiler form ID document library. So here, we'll go ahead and pick the same patient that we were showing in the document earlier. And you'll notice that this patient has multiple visits. You're able to actually take and select that visit and tie the document to that specific visit. So that's helpful, of course, if something was done on the visit that the doctor needs some sort of verification on, or any test results or anything else that goes with that particular patient. However, in the case where a lab or something may have occurred prior to the visit, you would do this without an account number so that it files in the chart to a workload, so there's an actionable item, but it doesn't tie it to a visit. So that makes it so that you can actually change the date of the actual document that was sent through. So I might have had a lab almost a month ago. I take that and I go ahead and send it through. And essentially what you see below is the document actually dropping into the scanning and archiving system that allows it to attach it to the chart. So that's really how the system works. It's really that quick. The nice thing about this is you get to view the document before you send it through, and they have also added some really great features to the application that has made it very easy to handle. You can take multiple documents, split them up. You can take other documents and merge them together. If you have a patient chart with 100 pages and with labs and pharmacy and everything else in it, you can basically pick and choose the pages that you want and put them into one pull them out of one document and put them into another. Very useful for you can take a whole day's faxes and essentially go through each one of them and tie them together as you need to before you actually send them to either to the patient chart or to a different folder for someone else to take action on. Very convenient. That's all I have for my portion.
So just to summarize what we talked about from a high level and also the detail that Rick went through, there are different values for different roles within the hospital, but as Rick was saying, the physician sees a benefit because they're not having to manually handle documents, rescan documents back in. From a nursing standpoint, the patient data is more accurate. The electronic access to the data in the patient chart, and then obviously the financial benefit here is, we're saving time, we're saving money, we're not wasting paper. The information in the chart is more accurate, and so overall it's just a reduction in cost and a reduction in risk. So Forward Advantage obviously has been a solution provider in the MEDITECH market for over 2 decades now. Our experience with MEDITECH and with healthcare in general has given us the ability to respond to customer requests, respond to solve problems, fill gaps, and to deliver solutions that we hope customers can use and can save customers time, money, and make life more efficient for our customer base.
Thank you, Kevin and Rick. We do have some time for some questions, and we'll do our best to get through them. If your question doesn't get answered today, we will follow up individually with a response after the webinar. So the first question that we have is the MEDITECH DR mandatory if we wanted to purchase RapidFiler? Rick, I think you can answer that one.
Sure. Yeah, the answer to that question is that the DR is preferred simply because it makes it far more efficient when you're using RapidFiler to look up records and to attach them to the appropriate accounts or the appropriate patient. However, if you have the patient information, RapidFiler does establish the proper format or the proper document format to file into MEDITECH.
Thank you. Another question we have, I think this one would be good for Kevin. Sometimes we get outside documents prior to when patients present and would need those documents attached to their chart individually. Would you say this could help with managing those documents?
Well, sure, yeah. As part of the folder structure for RapidFiler, you could have a situation set up like Rick has helped Summit Pacific do with different groups of people working different types of files, but you could also have an extra folder or a set of extra folders for holding documents until patients present. So you could create your own little hold queue, if you will, that keeps those documents available until the patient or the document needs to be processed.
Thank you. The next question is it possible to do more than one annotation on a single page?
Yes, we didn't cover annotation in this webinar, but one of the more recent add-ons to RapidFiler is the ability to annotate electronically within the application, and you can do multiple annotations on a single document or on multiple pages.
Thank you. And Rick, this one looks like it's for you. What would you say is the biggest benefit for Summit Pacific?
What we've seen as the biggest benefit for them is flexibility. Is definitely the first thing. They can actually make adjustments to distribute documents to really anyone they'd like to. The other part is efficiency. So because they're using the outpatient ambulatory portion of MEDITECH, they're able to take documents and route them. That alone, in just printing and scanning, has saved them tremendous amounts of time. If you're talking about handling 60,000 plus documents in a 6-month period, printing and scanning could be very costly. So being able to have it right there in front of you in an electronic format and able to annotate and route has been huge.
Thank you, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple more questions. Is this deployable to multiple users?
I'll take that one. Yes, definitely multiple users. Most of our customers that actually are in production on this are using this in a group environment.
Okay, the next question is, if we do not have MEDITECH scanning and archiving, can you cold feed to the EMR?
I'll take that. You have to have a full type of interface, and MEDITECH uses ECM and scanning and archiving to do this. So SCA, or scanning and archiving as it's known, is required to be able to host directly to the MEDITECH chart.
Thank you. The next question is for Kevin. Is this available for MEDITECH 6.8? I'm sorry, 6.08 and 6.1?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, so I do want to respect your time. For those of you who didn't get your question answered, we'll follow up in the next couple days or so. And as we mentioned before, this session is being recorded, so we'll send out a link for that. Again, I want to thank you for attending, and please follow up with our Client Services Department or dedicated sales team if you have any additional questions. This concludes the webinar.